There's no rhyme nor reason why. Just like it. So, 1, 2. I think this might be spearmint actually. Or is it peppermint? Anyway, doesn't really matter. disease of the past, or has it got worse now? They need to make an article into that, really. I have more questions to ask. Some more questions here. So this question is, I read that Vikings never really wore horned helmets, so where does the myth come from? Now, I always thought that they didn't wear them, and it actually came from a film. So let's see what the answer is. Absolutely, Vikings never wore horned helmets. Yeah. In fact, only a handful of helmets and helmet fragments are known from the Viking Age. All of them, as far as we can tell, have a pudding shape and a nasal to protect the nose and cheek pieces to protect the blood vessels behind the jaw. Later ones were more pointed. So, where did the myth of horned helmets come from? In fact, there are Iron Age horned helmets. They look weird and wonderful and seem to have been taken up by artists and So starting from the southwest, number 1 is Bude Castle in Cornwall, and number 2 is Berryhead Fort in Devon. Number 3 is the Costume Museum in Bath. Fabulous part of the world. 1667. The aptly named fort on a dramatic site overlooking the Orwell estuary was originally constructed of earth, reveted or faced with wood, and was later remodelled using thick brick walls. The lower and upper floors show how the fort evolved over 3 centuries to counter enemy warfare. The fort originated not as a status symbol, but as part of King Henry VIII's plans for new coastal defences. From a strategic position on a headland overlooking the southernmost point of the Suffolk coast, the fort was built to protect Harwich Harbour in Essex, an important naval base and shipyard situated by the confluence of the rivers Stour and Orwell. On the 2nd of July 1667, Admiral de Ruyter landed his marines on the Suffolk shore with plans to attack Landguard Fort. However, the Dutch invasion was repelled by the Duke of York and Albany's Maritime Regiment of Foot under the command of Captain Nathaniel Darrell. Darrell's Day is commemorated annually in July. So now you know. So this one is somewhere near Gloucester. Puzzlewood in Colford, Gloucestershire. Puzzlewood is a stunning example of the earliest open-cast iron mining, dating back about 2,700 years to before Roman times. Covering 14 acres and with paths laid down over 200 years ago, Puzzlewood is now a maze, a weird and wonderful landscape. It has a magical Tolkien-esque feel with passageways, deep ravines and wooden bridges. Trailing vines and mossy rocks abound in this fantastical wood in the midst of the beautiful forest of Dean. Wow, that sounds amazing. Many paths and steps weave amongst the moss and fern-covered gullies and pits in this atmospheric glen. It is quite possible to go round in circles, hence the name Puzzlewood. is supposed to indulge in music making during stormy nights. It's a World Heritage Site. Hill of Witches. So this must be Pendle Hill. I've done a couple of videos about this actually. So Pendle Hill is in Lancashire. The Pendle area is famous for the notorious discovery of witches in 1612, but there are many gems to enchant the visitor. Begin your visit in Barrowford, a traditional textile weaving town. Visit the Pendle Heritage Centre with its 18th century walled garden and crook barn inhabited by friendly goats and sheep. Then take a scenic drive around Pendle Hill. Its brooding presence is never